Hey guys, on this YouTube video, I'm gonna show you how to become a good wholesaler. What are the skills needed to actually be a good wholesaler? What does a good wholesaler look like? What does that person act like? What is his characteristics, right? What does he need to know in order to be a good wholesaler, right? So let's talk about this. First and foremost, if you're just new to my channel, I'm a professional real estate investor. My name's Rood. I'm 42. I have a fairly large portfolio of mobile home parks, Airbnbs, short-term vacation rentals on the beach. I do land development, I develop neighborhoods, and I wholesale and flip a ton of properties all over the United States with my students and partners, right? Wholesaling is where you should start first and foremost. If you're just getting on here and you're like, man, I want to get into real estate, I don't know where to start. Or maybe you're already wholesaling, you're like, I just need more skills. I need to get better at this. First and foremost, you got to understand, wholesaling is not a real estate business. It's a marketing and sales business. It has nothing to do, you're not a real estate investor if you're wholesaling property. You're just basically the Amazon of real estate. You're matching buyers with sellers and you're wholesaling the property for an assignment fee, period. That's what you need to understand first and foremost. Secondly, if you're gonna get good at real estate wholesaling, you have to have mad negotiating skills. And you have to have the awareness to understand what kind of person sells their property at a huge discount, right? You got to know the psychology of a motivated seller. Because not everybody's going to sell their property for pennies on the dollar enough for you to wholesale it or flip it or whatever it is that you want to do. They have to have a massive problem. And that's the first thing I want to talk to you guys about. The first thing that most wholesalers mess up on is they think every lead that comes in through their direct mail or their cold calling or bandit signs, whatever it may be, right? Their Google ads, they think every person that calls is a deal, and it's just not, right? What you have to understand is you may have to go through 20, 30 leads before you get that deal, for one. And two, you're looking for a particular conversation. You're looking for a particular tonality. You're looking for a particular conversation. That conversation is going to be prefaced around mostly them needing to sell their property and wanting to sell their property because they have a massive problem. Case in point, if somebody calls your direct mail and says, hey Chris, I got your letter, man. I get these letters all the time. You know, I mean, hell, everything's for sale. What's your price? Do you think that person's motivated? Of course not. And that's the conversations most of the people are going to call you back on your direct mail campaigns or even your cold call. The conversation should sound and look like from the direct mail in this cadence. Hey, Chris, I got your letter. I was wondering if you could come over and talk to me and kind of see what you can do on my house. I'm really needing to sell because, you know, I'm kind of going through, you know, tough times medically. I just had surgery and it's not looking good for me. And I may need to downsize because I'm not going to be able to take care of this property anymore with my health issues. And now that I had this surgery, I really need to think about how I can try to move. You hear that? That's obvious. That's a problem. And it can be in so many different forms of that. It can be in a form of they're getting divorced, they lost their job, they got medical issues, maybe they're mentally unstable. There's all kinds of reasons that people would want to sell their house and would create motivation. That's what you got to understand. That's the first and foremost thing. When you're on the phone, that's what you're looking for, problems. If you're not good at that and you're going to talk to everybody for 20, 30 minutes and you're going to burn yourself out, you should turn and burn these leads. You should only be on the call for maybe 20, you know, I say, I'm on a phone call maybe 60 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds, and I'm off the phone. Because I'm setting clear-cut expectations. I tell them the truth. I don't tell them I'm a retail buyer. I tell them I got to get their property for cheap, right? And that kind of weeds out all the rest of the people that are not motivated. And when I tell them, hey, look, Mr. Seller, I get you, you're going through some tough times. I just want to be upfront and honest with you. I'm not a retail buyer. I'm an investor, right? I got to get this property for cheap enough to better make money on it or rent out. Then I shut up, and then what I'm really listening for is if they say, Chris, I totally understand. I know you got to make money on the property, and I understand that my property needs a little bit of work, and I know I'm not going to get full retail. That's your lead, right? They have a problem. For one, you qualified for a problem. Two, you just stated your intention and you didn't bullshit people. Everybody wants to know, Chris, what is your secret weapon about how you negotiate? I am brutally honest, and I'm intentional, and I don't bullshit people. That's my secret weapon. Because most people are trying to bullshit people over the phone. I tell them I'm an investor. I tell them I got to get it for cheap. What that does, that cuts through all the bullshit. Now, once I know they're a qualified lead, then you can go on the appointment or send your partner, or whatever it is that you're going to go and do. If you're doing nationwide wholesaling, obviously you're going to have to close them over the phone. I don't teach that. There's other guys that teach that. I teach backyard wholesaling and partner up with people in different markets to where there's always somebody go and see them. Once you qualify them for that particular process, you know that you can go send somebody out there, you can go look at them. So then you're going to go out there, and then you got to get good at a few things after that. You got to know what things cost to fix. Because if you don't know what things cost to fix, you're going to leave a lot of money on the table, for one, when you're making your offer. And two, your cash buyer is going to eat your lunch because he's going to bullshit you and tell you that it needs more work than it actually does. Right? Don't bullshit yourself. Your cash buyer will try to get that deal from you if you don't know what you're doing at a cheaper price than what you got it for, and you're going to barely make any money. So you have to understand what things cost to fix. And the way you do that is you got to practice on figuring out what things cost to fix by calling contractors, talking to floor guys. Figure out what things cost per square foot. You got a 1,500 square foot house, call a roofer. What does it cost roughly for a 1,500 square foot house for a roof? What does an AC cost? What does it cost to paint a 1,500 square foot house by the square foot? And then you can kind of divide, subtract, add. And then floors, right? You can kind of add and subtract, do the same thing for floors. What does it cost per square foot for floors? That way you can't be bullshitted when you go to sell the deal, right? Next, you got to know the right location, right? If it's not a good location and you got a property you're putting all this time and effort in, you could have all the motivation, you could have everything can line up, the sun, moon, and stars, you know your numbers, but the location is terrible. Nobody's going to buy it from you. You wasting your time, right? That goes back to I have a triangle I talk about in my course, in my coaching program: price, location, motivation. Price, right? How much do they want for it? Now you got to ask them how much they want for it. As you're looking at Zillow and typing in the address and you're asking them how much they want for it, they may want way more than what you're even willing to pay as a wholesale fee. You kind of got to have a ballpark. Typically, I'm looking at Zillow. I'm usually baselining Zillow, and I'm going to give them 50 to 70% of what, or I'm going to offer that over the phone before I go out there too, because they may want an arm and a leg, even though you tell them you're an investor, right? That's going to be price. Another finger or spoke off the wheel of the price is, what do they owe on it? Because a lot of times you may go look at their property and what you're willing to offer, they owe more than what you're willing to even give them. So you need to make sure that they tell you what they owe. Say, hey, Mr. Seller, how much do you own this property? Because before I go look at it, I want to make sure that we even have the possibility of making a deal. And if they say, oh, I ain't telling you what I owe, they're not motivated. So you move on. And if they say, why you need to know that, just tell them the truth. Because I need to make sure that your house is even something that I could even consider buying, right? The next part of that triangle, you got price, location, which we talked about location. It's got to be in a decent area that somebody will buy that property from you. There's parts of, where I live that I know that I cannot. I just had a lead, matter of fact, come through just now. There's no possible way I can sell that property. Nobody will want that. It's so far away. It's in this terrible area, right? So you got to understand location. So you got price, location, motivation. You got the motivation part, which we talked about first. Do they have a problem? And you just jostle between all three of those points on the triangle: price, location, motivation. Now, if you have that down, you still got to be good at communication. This shit is not easy, right? People think that wholesaling's easy. I'm not the guru that's going to tell you wholesaling's easy, right? Let me sit down right here. I'm the kind of guy that's going to tell you how hard this shit is, right? Get on my swing here. Because this shit is hard. And he who has the most skills is going to win, right? If you ain't got no communication skills, excuse me, let me get comfortable here. You're not going to be able to be good at wholesaling. This business is not for everybody. It takes a particular skill set. It takes a certain tenacity to where you can be good at this. Otherwise, you may be pissing in the wind, right? Understand that good communication skills mean that people trust you, right? When you communicate with somebody and they don't trust you, they're typically not going to do business with you. So how do you build trust? For one, when you're at the appointment, you spend a little bit of time with them. Talk about things and build rapport based off of what they're interested in, right? What they're interested in is pretty easy to pick up. You just look around the house and see what they have on the wall, and you talk about what they like. Then you talk about the house, right? Build some rapport first. Then, once you're there, you've built rapport, you get into meat and potatoes, you got to look them dead in the eye and be this is super important, guys. You got to be super intentional. You almost got to put your intention inside of them. When you're talking to them and you're negotiating, you got to put your intention inside of them. People can feel intention. And when you put your intention inside of them, and that's a whole nother YouTube video on how to do that. I don't have enough time on this video. You'll get better at wholesaling. Now, when you put your intention in somebody and they feel that, and they know you're a confident guy, they're going to want to do business with you. You understand? And you've got to have really good negotiation tactics on top of the good communication skills, right? You're like, Chris, man, this is a lot of stuff, man. This is a whole lot of stuff. I don't know if I could do this, man. My guru told me that has a Lambo, all I got to do is just put some bandit signs out and answer phones. I'll make millions. It's not that simple, guys. You got to have some skills. Anything that's worth doing has got to have a barrier to entry. It's got to be somewhat hard. Now, once you have established the good communication with them and you've built good rapport, they see that you're an intentional guy. You look them in the eyes. You have good body. You're somewhat well dressed, and you know what you're talking about. And you exude confidence, they're going to want to do business with you because they're going to be confident that you can close the deal. This boils down to the next and final step, which is negotiation skills. You see all these different layers? There's a lot of layers to this. Now, obviously in negotiations, you've got one party's trying to get it for the cheapest, the other party's trying to get the most. And you kind of sometimes land in the middle of that, depending on how motivated they are, depending on how big of a problem they have. First and foremost, what you need to understand about real estate negotiations, especially dealing with motivated sellers, is that your job is to not be fair. Being fair will actually get you hurt, and you'll end up overpaying for a property and not being able to wholesale it, not being able to flip it, make money, or keep it as a rental, whatever it is that you want to do with it. Your job is to find their bottom. Period. That's what negotiations is about, to find their bottom. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't let this shit overcomplicate you in your mind. You're like, oh man, negotiation skills, that sounds like really tough and you got to spend years and years. No, I'm telling you, I've been doing this shit for a long time on a lot of property. I've done a lot of transactions. Negotiation is finding their bottom. And the way you find their bottom is whatever you want to get it for. Let's just say you have to have in your mind right now, what's What's the most you're gonna pay for it? You better predetermine that in your mind. What's the most I'm gonna pay for that? And that could be, hey, I know the most I can pay before I can't really make any money is 100,000. You're not gonna offer 100,000. You're gonna offer about 80,000. Now, most likely, the seller is probably not gonna wanna do that, but you never know. They may say, well, Chris, I was hoping you would give me 110, and you know your highest is 100, and you're like, well, why don't you meet me in the middle, or I'll come up a little bit to 85. And like, no, I can't, Chris. I'll come down to 100. And like, oh, okay. Look, I tell you what. I came up to 85. Why don't we can you do 90, Mr. Seller? And then the seller will come back and say, hey, I tell you what, Chris. I'll do 92.5 if you can get it done in a couple weeks. That is basic negotiation. In his mind, he probably already knew, he already thought his bottom was about 92.5 or 90, right? It is a give and take until you hit that middle ground. That is negotiations. Now, that can be modified more or less depending on how big the problem of the motivated seller has. If the seller is super motivated, has got a lot of problems, he will come down faster and more than he normally would. And you have to gauge motivation, because if somebody's got a massive problem, you need to base your offer off of their motivation and their problem. That's why it's super important to know why they're selling. If you know they're gonna lose their house in 2 weeks and they have to sell, do you think you're gonna give them top dollar for the house? Of course not. You have to understand these things. You got to better discern how motivated they are. But if they have a semi-problem, not a massive problem, then you're not going to be able to offer as much. And this is an art, guys. This is an absolute art. This is not a science. A science has precise rules, precise things that have to happen in order for something else to happen. Like a chemical reaction, this happens, you mix these two chemicals, it happens every time. In negotiations, it's an ebb and flow. It's not an exact science, it's more of an art. And the more you do it and the more times you put in the reps, you get better and better and better at negotiations. That is the truth about being a good wholesaler, right? Obviously, you got to, look presentable. I mean, there's a lot of things, you go over there and you got, your teeth are all nasty, or you got a big hairy face and you look just rough around the edge. You got boogers hanging out your nose. Obviously, that's going to go against you as, somebody that's trying to negotiate, right? So there are some common sense things you got to keep in mind here. But for the most part, I gave you guys a 50,000 foot view of what negotiation looks like, what you need to look at to be a good professional wholesaler like myself. And last but not least, when you're a good wholesaler, you already know who you're going to sell that to before you even get to the appointment and go look at the house, because you know and understand what your cash buyers want. I know and understand my investors, what they like, what areas they want to be in, and how much they typically pay for, if they're a buy and hold, if they're a flipper. I know these things going forward. And how do I know these things? Because I have conversations about what they like. I've sold them so many deals. I know what they like. I know the areas they like. That takes time, guys. So don't beat yourself up. It's all about the reps. It's all about doing this over a duration of time. That's about as much information I can give you guys on this short video, which turned into a 20-minute video, that I can, without going, because there's obviously more things we can get into, the nitty gritty, the very tactical stuff. But that is a good 50,000 foot baseline for you guys that just getting started, or maybe you are good at it, but you feel like you can sharpen up your skills. I gave you some good stuff that you can sharpen up your skills on. Just keep in mind, don't get stuck in this wholesale game forever. I've been doing this stuff for 8 years. I've progressed. There's a natural progression that I teach. You start with wholesaling, so you learn how to become the source of the deal. For you guys that that haven't read my book, you want a free ebook, go to thesourceofthedeal.com and pick up my free ebook. You can read up more on wholesaling. But we start everybody at wholesaling. That's elementary school. Then we graduate you to raising private money. That's junior high. Then we start you on flipping houses, which is what? That's going to be high school. Then you go to buy and hold. Once you stacked a bunch of cash, you need to put your money into some assets. That's buy and hold. That's college. Then you go into graduate school, right? That's going to be land development. And then you become a professor, which is what? You become a lender and you get into private equity. Maybe you start a fund. That's the progression of a professional real estate investor. Don't get stuck in wholesaling. I've seen this too many times. I develop neighborhoods now. I'm looking to maybe start a fund here soon. But I didn't just start off that way, right? I've been doing real estate since I was 25. I've been doing wholesaling full-time professionally for about 8 years now. So it takes time, right? Actually, it's been 8 years. So if you want to learn more on how to do this, go to chrisrood.com, book a call with me if you want to get into the game. I can show you the whole ropes. If you want to study the game, I'd probably go follow me on Instagram at Real Estate Rood. I drop a ton of nuggets there to where you can learn the game, because I show my day-to-day operations of what we do on a day. Me and my wife are full-time real estate investors, and we show that through stories. So you can pick up a lot of the nuggets. You can go on my YouTube channel here and like and subscribe and go through. I've got 600 and something videos here that can help you skill up your game. So I hope that helps, guys. I wish somebody had told me that, when I first got started. I try to break it down, make it as simple as possible. Otherwise, don't overcomplicate this stuff. It's all about putting in the reps. You didn't know how to ride a bike when you first got on a bike. You just rode and you got beat up. You scraped your knees. You fell on your elbows. You cried. You were upset, but you got back on the bike. It's no different than real estate and wholesaling real estate. You gotta put in the reps. Bruce Lee once said, "I don't fear the man that knows 10,000 moves. I fear the man that's done 10,000 moves one time." And that's how you got to think, guys. You got to be the Bruce Lee. Put in those reps. I'll see you guys in the next video. Otherwise, keep skilling up at chrisrood.com. Peace.